Live from the NHL Draft in Nashville, presented by Coolbet, Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily, with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Hello from Nashville, Tennessee, the site of tonight's round one of the NHL Draft. And welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Andrew Paterson, Michael Remis with you. Got a lot to talk about today, coming off of yesterday's big trade involving Pierre-Luc Dubois to the Los Angeles Kings. Of course, as we were on live yesterday afternoon, the trade became imminent. We heard many reports of what was coming back to the Winnipeg Jets. Shortly after we finished up, as normally happens, it became official, and we've got clarity. A couple pieces that we thought might be going to LA didn't happen, and an extra piece coming I'm sure made a few Winnipeg Jet fans crack up and obviously sweetened the pot for the Jets. So we'll talk about all of that right now, as well as where the Jets and Kevin Cheveldayoff go from here, heading into tonight's first round just down the street at the Bridgestone Arena. We will be there live. We won't be broadcasting live from the draft floor, although the Illegal Curve guys are going to do a little watch along of the draft tonight. And Remo and I will be popping on in the first hour of the program with Illegal Curve. Kevin Cheveldayoff is going to speak this afternoon. We're not going to go long. We often have, when there's lots of exciting things, we'll kind of take it. Beautiful thing of the freedom of using YouTube and the podcast is that we don't really have the same time constraints we used to. Today we do, though, because Chevy's speaking at 4 p.m. We're going to get down there along with the local media that have made the trip, including Sean Reynolds and Murat, who are both going to join us today on the program. And we're also going to get Ryan Kennedy from the Hockey News to break down tonight's round one with a little bit more insight from a guy that has lived and breathed the draft class of 2023. But as I mentioned, Cheveldayoff speaking at 4 p.m. today. We'll get that up on our YouTube channel at some point a little later on. So make sure, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and turn your notifications on when the new content is available. We'll also be hooking up with a number of folks over the next couple of days at the draft, and we'll have that for you on today's show or tomorrow's show, as well as probably a little leftover on Friday when we get back to Winnipeg to wrap the entire week. Just before we bring in Michael Remis, we are going to hear from one of the newest Winnipeg Jets, Gabe Vilardi, who met the media this morning via a Zoom call, as well as some parting words from Pierre-Luc Dubois, the newest member of the Los Angeles Kings. Before we do, though, of course, Winnipeg Sports Talk at the NHL Draft in Nashville, presented by our great partners at Coolbet. Hit up coolbet.com if you're interested in betting on any of the props on tonight's draft. It's all up there. And myself, Pat Gregoire, and Dustin Nielsen did do a new episode of The Lock Shop earlier today, talking a little golf, the Rocket Mortgage Open, and tonight's draft. You can get that at Lock Shop Bets on YouTube. Subscribe over there as well. Just before we bring in Remis and I hear from Gabriel Vilardi and Pierre-Luc Dubois, got to thank the sponsors that make this show happen every day. Obviously, our presenting sponsor, Coolbet Canada, as well as Modern Man Barbershop, Aquatech, Canadian Club, Manitoba Battery, Nick and DQ, F Apparel, Wallace & Wallace, Vita Health Fresh Market, BP, Royal Sports, Consolidated Supply, Princess Auto, Little Brown Jug, Aikens Lake, Breezy Bend, Assiniboia Downs, and of course the Winnipeg Gold Eyes. And we will get to a why not question of the day for our friends at Not Auto Corp overly at Waverly and McGillivray. Let's get Remis in here and get things going. Reem, showtime tonight, but it was showtime yesterday for Kevin Cheveldayoff, and it'll be very interesting to see if anything else happens with the Winnipeg Jets this afternoon while we're on the air, or before things get going tonight and the Connor Bedard starts the picks flying off the board for round number one.
Yes, so great to be on. I don't know what we're going to talk about now that this Dubois drama has finally ended. We'll talk about Gabe Vilardi and the picks, but I am excited to see what happens tonight. This is a, historic draft with Connor Bedard going first overall. We're all expecting that to Chicago, but for the Winnipeg Jets, they've traded Dubois. And I saw Kevin Cheveldayoff telling Mike Zeisberger at NHL.com that the Winnipeg Jets are not done yet, and we should expect other moves. whether that's Connor Hellebuck or Mark Scheifele or the expected buyout of Blake Wheeler. After this Dubois trade, I think, now you can start, making the other moves that you had planned for. So this is an exciting time for Jets fans. We had a record show yesterday, over 1,100 people watching us
thanks
live.
to everyone that joined us, and
chat.
especially all the new people that have found Winnipeg Sports Talk. Hopefully you're back again today, and hit that red subscribe button, and you can find us wherever you get your favorite podcast. Just search Winnipeg Sports Talk and subscribe there. Just quickly before we get into the trade, you mentioned tonight it is a big night. You can really feel the buzz in and around here, the media headquarters, Central Hotel, just down the street. There was a prospects breakfast this morning. I've yet to see Connor Bedard, but I've seen quite a bit of Adam Fantilli. Fantilli, who is expected to go second overall to the Anaheim Ducks, has a real aura about him, a real level of confidence, pretty big kid as well, and does look a little older than some of the young men that'll be hearing their names called tonight. But of course, we've already seen some news happen today. Ross Colton traded to the Colorado Avalanche in exchange for one of the picks that they got yesterday from the Montreal Canadiens in the Alex Newhook trade. And Newhook was dealt very shortly after it was made official that Pierre-Luc Dubois would not be going to the Montreal Canadiens. He would be an LA King. PLD is going to Southern California, and he is was the recipient of an 8-year extension with the Winnipeg Jets at $8.5 million per season, and then was flipped to the Jets for the package that is now confirmed, including Gabriel Vilardi, who's the centerpiece of the deal, coming off a 23-goal breakout season after some injury problems that hampered him in the first couple years of his season, a former 11th overall pick. Along with Vilardi, Alex Iafallo, a very strong kind of middle six player, great two-way, very strong defensively. He's got 2 years left on his contract at $4 million per season. Vilardi's going to need a new deal as an RFA, 4 more years of team control for Vilardi. And Rasmus Kupari, who was a first-rounder in 2018. And Kupari is a little different than the other two, not as established at the NHL level, although did play 66 games last year. Very, very accomplished at the American Hockey League level, and a first-rounder that I think certainly will benefit from a change of scenery and a new opportunity with the Winnipeg Jets. Gabe Vilardi, when he spoke to the media earlier today, described Kupari as a competitive, very, very fast player and skilled, and be interesting to see what he makes. Now, we knew that those 3 players were part of the deal yesterday when we were doing the show. A couple of things that were rumored that did not come to fruition. First and foremost was most people that were kind of in on the deal had said that those were the pieces that were coming to Winnipeg, but there would be multiple pieces going back to LA. That wasn't the case. There was no Jansen Harkins. There was no Logan Stanley. All of those players are still property of the Winnipeg Jets. Will they be traded over the course of this next couple days? Certainly, that is a possibility. But I have to say, as someone, a Winnipegger that supports the Jets as opposed to other teams, we all know what we've been through listening to Montreal Canadiens fans tell us that the Jets were screwed. They had no other way to move on Pierre-Luc Dubois than to take what the Habs were willing to give, or he would be there for free in 1 year as an unrestricted free agent. Obviously, that's not the case with PLD signing the extension. However, it was a little juicy to see that the Jets also got a second rounder added into the deal, not for this year's draft, but for next year's draft. And that pick from the LA Kings was, of course, from the Montreal Canadiens. Overall, Remo, and I know we've both been talking to a ton of people around here about the trade. Overall, I think the consensus from people in the hockey world that the Winnipeg Jets made out very well in this trade, especially considering the situation that they were facing. And they got some pretty interesting pieces, and I think exciting pieces coming back, although they're losing a hell of a player in Pierre-Luc Dubois.
Yeah, I agree, Huss. I was surprised that second-round pick was included in addition to all the players, and they didn't have to give up Harkins. And the fact that it is Montreal's second-round pick in 2024 is pretty funny. I know you were going back and forth with some Habs fans who were like, talk to me in a couple weeks.
There's a few people that asked me to circle back. And that was, of course, after the report that Paterson would give the Winnipeg Jets a list of teams that they'd be willing to do a sign and trade with. And maybe it wasn't just Montreal. And listen, of course, I had a little fun on that. Hey, I think a lot of people know if you spend any time on the social media streets, there's a lot of takes, there's a lot of back and forth. And hey, we were taking it for a little while. It was fun to maybe give it back. The bottom line is, regardless of what fans or one of us do, having fun on social media, this is a huge trade for the Winnipeg Jets. The conclusion of the PLD era and the trade tree, if you will, from Patrik Laine and Jack Roslovic, which turned into Pierre-Luc Dubois, now is 4 assets, 3 players that will presumably be on the roster this year, as well as a second rounder going up next year. And all in all, reports from people that have no skin in the game around here in Nashville, I would say 75% of the people I talked to very impressed with the job Cheveldayoff did and turning Pierre-Luc Dubois in a tough situation into the players that are coming to Winnipeg and becoming Jets.
Yeah, Gabe Vilardi to me is the centerpiece of the deal. And you look at just goals. I mean, Pierre-Luc Dubois' career high in goals is 28 in 21-22. He took 81 games for them. But Gabe Vilardi last year, 23 goals in 63 games. I think there were some concerns early on in his career where he wasn't able to stay healthy, but I think that's behind him. And he is an RFA. They will have to sign him, but by all accounts, he's excited to come to Winnipeg, excited for the opportunity. He's going to play in the top 6 here. He can play center or wing, unsure. And Alex Iafallo, he's got 2 years left on his deal. He can play middle 6. He's kind of hard-nosed kind of player, and he's definitely going to get an opportunity here as well. And look, if he doesn't want to sign long-term, then you can add on to that Patrik Laine trade tree, which we'll be talking about probably until the end of time. So I think the Jets were put in a real tough situation here. And as you said, I think Murat tweeted this out and we're having him on. He said, Chevy was boxed into a corner and, got out the trap door, found the secret door exit. And I think for the Kings, they got a center in Pierre-Luc Dubois, 8 years, $8.5 million AAV. For a guy who's 25 with the cap going up, I think that, it could look to be more of a bargain than we think it is now. But they got a little better there. And the Jets, I think their goal was to try and stay competitive. I think they did that, and I think they got a nice return. I mean, that second-round pick from Montreal, they're probably not going to be very good this year. That could be a very high second-round pick.
Yeah, well, listen, Jets fans will certainly be hoping that the Habs lose on a regular basis, and the value of that pick is closer to the first round. Obviously, Montreal with the New Hook edition, pivoting after PLD, ended up going to Colorado or LA. We'll think that they'll be better this season, but I guess we will see what that means. We're going to listen to Vilardi coming up in just a second. By the way, shout out to everybody in chat right now. We're getting some great comments here. I did see Doug, I think it was Doug Phil that just said that Pierre-Luc Dubois will sign a 1-day contract with the Montreal Canadiens to retire a Hab at the end of the 8-year deal.
Well, everyone's saying like Dubois he played 3 years in Columbus and 3 years in Winnipeg, and how many years is he going to play in LA? I think a lot of people speculating that he won't be do that whole contract. But I will say that one of the top comments, I posted the trade on Instagram. Your reaction. On TikTok as well, we're seeing a lot of people saying, I'm a born-again Chevy fan. And a lot of people maybe who had lost faith in Kevin Cheveldayoff, his ability to get out of this tough situation. I think they've have renewed confidence in the Winnipeg Jets general manager to pull off these deals, because I think people are feeling good about the return that the Winnipeg Jets got. It's better than what Josh Anderson.
And Joel Armia. Dvorak. I mean, whatever. The guys that the Habs just wanted to get rid of because of their salary situation. As far as Cheveldayoff goes, I mean, listen, we hear it every day. I think there was a lot of questioning about Cheveldayoff. I mean, he has some big-time supporters. He certainly has some big-time detractors. And I think there's a discussion on all of that. However, the one thing that, I've kind of maintained over the last couple months, like, let's see how this plays out, is that if you look at history, Kevin Cheveldayoff has come out looking pretty good in very, very difficult situations. And as far as NHL GMs, if you're going to be backed into a corner, you're going to have to make a deal happen, with limited opportunities to trade a particular player for whatever reasons, whether it was Jacob Trouba, whether it was the Andrew Kopp situation, certainly this case in Pierre-Luc Dubois. Cheveldayoff, I think, has done a pretty darn good job, and certainly that was what we were hearing from a lot of people around the league as we solicited feedback on the big deal yesterday as well as this morning from around here in Nashville. Let's hear from Gabe Vilardi, though. And by the way, Pierre-Luc Dubois, I thought, we'll hear a couple clips from Doobie in a minute. Said, a lot of nice things about his time in Winnipeg, speaking about the opportunity. I'm sure we'll have time for that. But, Remo, we got to hear from the centerpiece of this deal, Gabriel Vilardi, earlier today. And I have to admit, I was pretty impressed with the way that, he handled himself. I mean, let's face it. This is, you're on a very competitive LA team that feels that they're very close. They've hung with the Edmonton Oilers in these two series the last couple of years. He's coming off a career year. Being traded at this point, even if you're the centerpiece of a deal for a very good player like Pierre-Luc Dubois, it's got to be difficult for a young man. And I have to say, if people didn't see it earlier, we've got a few clips from the newest member of the Winnipeg Jets. Certainly said a lot of the things that I think a fan base wants to hear. Listen, this is a production business, and it's about going out and doing your job. But when you are moved from a place like Southern California, where it's probably pretty comfortable, to a place like Winnipeg that we all love, but obviously is quite different than SoCal and Hollywood and LA, I think there's always a question as to how players are going to handle it. And certainly right off the bat, Gabriel Vilardi, put a best foot forward out to the Winnipeg community and said he's excited to be a Winnipeg Jet. And I think really excited about the opportunity that awaits him and some of the players that he'll get an opportunity to play with once the season gets going on in October.
Yeah, you think, just the way that it's gone, you think a guy going from LA to Winnipeg, playoff team. I guess Winnipeg was a playoff team last year, but there's been just so much off-ice stuff going on. But for Gabe Vilardi, I agree. He sounded excited. He sounded excited to play in Canada. He's currently, spending his off-season in Kingston, where he's from. He's excited to come over with a couple teammates. That's easier. And he's excited, he said he's willing to do whatever it takes to help the Winnipeg Jets win, whether that's playing center, that's playing wing. He hasn't talked with Kevin Cheveldayoff yet, but is excited for the opportunity and, again, willing to do what it takes and wants to help the team win. So I thought he said all the right things in his introductory press conference before we get to the clips here.
Yeah, well, let's do exactly that. Let's hear from the newest member of the Winnipeg Jets, Gabriel Vilardi. Still waiting on an availability at some point for Alex Iafallo and Erasmus Kapari. But Gabriel Vilardi was the player that I think was at the top of the wish list of the Winnipeg Jets in this package for Pierre-Luc Dubois. And he spoke earlier today. Why don't you just tee up these clips as we hear from the newest Jet?
This was his first one on coming to Winnipeg.
Yeah, more opportunity, obviously. I think last year I kind of played in more of a bottom six role, and hopefully I just want to keep growing my game and getting better and obviously helping the Jets and however that is. Just excited to kind of get going there.
Yeah, again, we're relatively simple, saying some of the right things. He is a Canadian player, played for the London Knights, spends his summers in Kitchener, and is back here right now as is back in Canada and said, is not planning on doing much traveling, might hit up his brother in Calgary at some point, and I imagine a trip to Winnipeg will also be in the mix as well. But the key thing there from that quote is seemingly has a good attitude about this, Remis, as difficult as being traded at this point in your career is, but also speaks to the opportunity that awaits Gabriel Vilardi. He's going to be a guy that's going to get plenty of chances to show what he can do and take his game to even another level after breaking out last season with a 23-goal campaign.
Yeah, you look at his stats here. In 2021, he played 54 games, had 23 points. And then the year after, not this past season, but the season before that, he didn't play much. He only played 25 games and had 7 points. But last year, breakout year for him, 41 points in 63 games, 23 goals, 18 assists, and felt like he took steps forward in his defensive game. In the playoffs, point-per-game player, 2 goals, 2 assists in their first-round series against Edmonton. So this guy is a player. I think he can help the Jets. And a nice key return here. He is an RFA. They're going to have to go, sign him to a contract, but he hasn't. There were jokes on Twitter last night saying, "Oh, another player has said it was their dream to always play for Montreal." I don't believe that's the case here. So we do expect a deal to get done at some point.
Not at all. Let's get to a little bit more of the newest Jet, Gabriel Vilardi, here on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
Yeah, here he talked about taking a step forward last year.
Yeah, definitely being healthy. Obviously, that's always helps. And I think just being more of a shoot first guy. I think I kind of changed that for my game. And I think one thing that was Todd was very hard on me. It was my defensive game in terms of the first few years of my pro career. And I think last year I kind of turned that corner, and I think he kind of relied on me a bit more in the defensive end, which is obviously huge. And just want to, like I said, I'm going to keep saying it, but I want to just keep growing my game. I think there's still a lot I can do.
Who's enjoying that comment, and that's Rick Bowness. Obviously playing under Todd McClellan and learning the defensive side of the game, earning more responsibility from a veteran head coach was a big part of the reason why he was able to play as much as he did and put up the numbers that he did. Vilardi, though, for his part, his reputation is more of a finisher. A bit of a sniper. And certainly with 23 goals in 63 games in his best season in the playoffs. And again, he had 2 goals and 2 assists in 5 playoff games for the Los Angeles Kings. But maybe the most important part is how much he was able to play last year, because early on in his career, really right after being drafted, some pretty significant injuries that I think really hampered his development. So as he mentioned, continuing to grow his game and take it to the next level is a big part of where he's at right now. We'll have a little bit more from Vilardi, as well as Pierre-Luc Dubois as the show continues, but we're going to hook up with our pal Sean Reynolds coming up in just a second. Before we do that, got to give a shout out to a few of our sponsors, including Modern Man Barbershops, now with 8 locations in Winnipeg, including their newest locations on Pembina Highway and on Plessy Road. Modern Man Barbershops offer a variety of grooming services for fellas, including haircuts, beard shaping, shaves, color services, and more. Pop on down. Book your look if you'd like via modernmanbarber.com, or follow them on Instagram at Modern Man Barbershops. We got some weird weather right now. By the way, heads up tonight in southern Manitoba. I see tornado watches pretty much for the entire southern part of the province. It is going to be hot coming up on this weekend, hitting 30s again. Why not make 2023 the year you take the plunge with Aquatech? Visit aqua-tech.ca to design your own custom pool. The Aquatech team can provide on-the-spot pricing from designers, as well as financing options that suit you. And hey, whole home renovations start with Aquatech as well. With thousands of rentals as their foundation, let Aquatech upgrade any space in your home. Aquatech's ready to make your reno dreams a reality. Learn more about design, pricing, and financing options at aqua-tech.ca. Well, folks, the summer is here. The kids are out of school, and it's time to make the most of our beautiful, albeit maybe a little too short summer. Manitoba Battery is here to help you out with the best prices on batteries for everything you need for summer fun with the family. And not only will you be shopping local and getting the best price in town, beating the pants off all the big buck stores, Manitoba Battery is going to allow you to spend more time with the kids and more time with the family, and not running around looking for a parking spot or picking up these batteries, because they'll deliver it to you anywhere in the city of Winnipeg for free for any order of over $60. Manitoba Battery literally has batteries for everything you could possibly need this summer. Find out more online at manitobabattery.com, and let Manitoba Battery bring the battery to you and leave you with more time for what's important right now. It's summer. Again, they're at 1026 Logan Avenue. Give them a call or check them out online at manitobabattery.com. And just before we bring in Sean Reynolds, Bombers on the road this week, but back at home next week. And let's just say that they're going to be stocking up those Canadian Club and ginger ale supplies for Bomber fans at the next game. Canadian Club, proud sponsors of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and Canada's favorite Canadian whiskey. And now Canada has a favorite new summer drink, the CC and Ginger, available in cans. Pick it up at your local liquor marts or at your favorite and most convenient beer vendor as well. All right, we've got lots to talk about. A big trade yesterday and what's next for the Winnipeg Jets. Joining us from just elsewhere in downtown Nashville right now, before we all get together tonight at Bridgestone Arena, is, of course, Sean Reynolds of Sportsnet.ca. He and Kenny did a pop-up K&R, so if you want more on the trade, you can certainly check that up on the Kenny and Rennie YouTube channel. Ren, what's going on, pal? How are you doing?
I'm feeling great. I've got a belly full of Nashville hot chicken right now. The boss took me out, and the meeting was at Hattie B's, so I couldn't be better.
Nicely done.
I could not be better.
Give us a quick review of the Nashville hot chicken. Remis and I have been going from barbecue joint to barbecue joint. That is still on the to-do list, hopefully, before we get out of here.
Yeah, so that, Prince's is, I believe, the original. I've never been there before. The one that seems to have surpassed it is Hattie B's. A lot has changed since the last time I was here. We used to, around 2018, and even before that, I spent a lot of time in Nashville covering that team when they were going a little bit deeper into the playoffs. I haven't been here for a while. Lots changed, but they've got a new location right across from the arena. And I can tell you it is the equal food, right? Like, it's not one of these things where they took it to a different location and they didn't bring the recipes quite with them. It's the same thing. So you guys got to go hit that up. It is, like I was saying, my boss, she was telling me that may be the best fried chicken she's ever had, period. Never mind the hot chicken aspect of it, which is something you got to check out.
I love it. Well, we'll certainly make that happen. That being said, it's going to be a pretty busy afternoon and day, and
no
the
doubt.
next couple of days with everything going on. Of course, we'll be there talking to Kevin Cheveldayoff along with you coming up at 4 p.m. today. But let's quickly get back to yesterday. I know you, like us, have been talking to a lot of people in the hockey world over the last 24 hours since this trade was made official. What was your first reaction to the haul coming back to Winnipeg for Pierre-Luc Dubois and only Pierre-Luc Dubois? And what have you heard from some of your contemporaries around the hockey world that you've been discussing the deal with?
Well, we had a little bit of time because those names got out there fairly early. And so we knew that it was going to be a volume return, not so much a, quality for quality return. It really seemed to shape things a little bit more and help us understand when the Winnipeg Jets say that they don't want to rebuild, they want to retool, kind of understand what that means. I always go back, and you and I talked about this on your show. I was always going to look at this not just through the lens of what they got for Pierre-Luc Dubois, but in the end, what they got for Patrick Laine and Jack Roslovic and, what they sent out the road or initially, which kind of created this situation, right? Like in every situation here, this has been Kevin Cheveldayoff's hand being forced. Patrick Laine wanting out of town, Jack Roslovic wanting out of town. He was forced to make that trade, got back Pierre-Luc Dubois, who didn't want to stay, so he's forced to make that trade. I'll say this, being forced into moving a player and kind of having your options limited by where that player is willing to go and sign an extension puts your back against the wall. Kevin Cheveldayoff did an admirable job getting a return here with his back against the wall. I mean, Gabriel Vilardi is, has the potential to give you that skilled guy that replaces a lot of what Pierre-Luc Dubois brought to the table. Alex Iafallo is a true pro, great defensive guy, can contribute up front. Like, this is a guy you want in your lineup who brings you depth. Rasmus Kupari has the potential to be a pretty big player. And again, all these players capable of contributing in this time now. I would say this, what's happened here is, like, there's no one who's going to tell me that Gabriel Vilardi or Alex Iafallo or Rasmus Kupari are going to bring the wow factor that Pierre-Luc Dubois did. And definitely none of them are going to bring the wow factor that Patrick Laine did in his time in Winnipeg. But I like what this signals in the idea of that you bring in three players like this. If the Winnipeg Jets can get to a place which they really haven't been to for a really long time under Paul Maurice, and really, not so much even last year. It seemed to be at the beginning of the year, but not by the end of the year under Rick Bowness. The Jets have always been a top-heavy team, and they lived and died by their upper skilled players, and they've died more often than they've lived when the chips are on the table. I like the idea of this because to me, it looks like they're trying to take a page out of the LA Kings book. And the LA Kings are a team that have been tough the last couple of years and a tough out because they've got a lot of depth and a lot of just really good hockey players. This to me signals that if the Jets are going to do what they did with Pierre-Luc Dubois, and if they're going to continue that on with Connor Hellebuck and continue that on with Mark Scheifele and move those pieces, that they're trying to become a deeper team that likes to compete. I've got no problem with that shift in philosophy. We've seen the uber skilled team and what they can bring to you. We've seen that from the Jets the last number of years. It hasn't got the results. I have no problem at all with them trying a new approach, and I think this accomplishes that.
Yeah, it's a great point because I think it really does change the makeup of the Winnipeg Jets over the course of the top 12. And again, we'll see if some younger players get an opportunity to maybe push their way into the lineup. Certainly Kupari, where he fits in as a speedy player with some skill that, played 66 games last year, but in a very limited role with the Los Angeles Kings. But we'll start with Vilardi, and Vilardi's so intriguing because let's face it, this guy was an 11th overall pick. Development sort of stunted due to injury the first couple years. We talk a lot about Pierre-Luc Dubois. Well, Dubois had 27 goals last year, which was a real strong season in 71 games or so. Vilardi had 23 in just over 60 games, 63 games. So, there certainly is that offensive pop. And what impressed me, and we just played the clip, was how he's looking to continue to grow as a player and the steps that he felt he took. He wasn't talking about the fact that he scored a career-high 23 goals. He was talking about the fact that he became a much more responsible defensive player and earned that trust of Todd McClellan. And I imagine, and I said this right after we played the clip, that has to be music to the ears of Rick Bowness.
Yeah, I agree with that. When you made that point, I thought bang on, Huss, because basically that has been the secret sauce of the LA Kings over the last number of years. Is they've got some players who can jump up and do some special things, but not a ton of them. They're not a team that jumps out at you from the page with what you take a look at what each skilled player is able to bring, but they play a really defensively sound game under Todd McClellan. If you think about last year, that team, they came rolling into town. We did a hockey night in Canada, and the big story about the LA Kings was that they were basically running with their AHL defense, like a bunch of guys who were playing for the first time and were in way over their heads, and it wasn't catching up with them. And even Todd McClellan, when we talked to him, was like waiting for it to catch up with them. But at the same time, he said, but we will control what we can control. And what we can control is teaching our players to be extremely defensively sound so that the capability to open up mistakes for an inexperienced back end gets shrunk by the fact that you've got these really strongly defensively responsible forwards who are willing to cover things off and help all up and down the ice, right? And so that's what you're getting from LA Kings pedigree type players. That's what you're getting with Alex Iafallo. That's what you're getting with Gabe Vilardi, is players who have been schooled in that thought process, which I do think is quite a bit different than what we've seen for the most part from the Winnipeg Jets over the last 4 or 5 years or so. At the beginning of the season last year, they really jumped into that. And we saw the success that the Jets had when they were kind of committed to that. And then we saw the Jets stray away from that. I think the importance of guys like Gabe Vilardi and Alex Iafallo coming into the room is that this is what they know. This is what they've been indoctrinated in. This is how they've shaped themselves to the degree that this is who they are as players. Well, the more players you get like that, and I count a guy like Nito Niederreiter as being another one of these guys who are less likely to stray away from that kind of game, the quicker and better you can get back to the Rick Bowness style that we saw at the beginning of the year, where he's asking his team to be defensively responsible and compete, let the offense take care of itself. That creates a much harder team to play against, and I think a more successful team, as evidenced by what the Winnipeg Jets were at the beginning of the year last year, as opposed to what they were at the end, where they seem to become disinterested in that defensive game and the effort level that went with it.
Sean Reynolds with us from Sportsnet here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. I see we're pushing 800 in the chat. Another huge turnout today on WST for Draft Day. Hit that red subscribe button if you haven't already, and make sure to get on over to the Kenny and Rennie channel as well and give them a sub. And check out yesterday's show after we finished off with live reaction essentially with he and Ken after that was done. And just as we continue, Remo's got a poll up. We do have a why not question of the day for our friends at Not Autocorp over at Waverly and McGillivray. Pretty simple. Who won the trade? You got the Jets, Kings, don't know. Give us your thoughts as well. If you want to put a grade level from a Jets perspective for Kevin Cheveldayoff on this, you can hit that in chat as well. So, I mean, Rennie, we'll have plenty of time talking about the new players, hearing from them as, you know, this comes in. But obviously, this is just the start of what is expected to be plenty of player movement for the Winnipeg Jets. How do you think this trade and the return affects what Kevin Cheveldayoff and the Jets might be thinking or asking for as it pertains to Connor Hellebuyck, as well as Mark Scheifele, who have been on the market and discussed to a number of teams heading into tonight's first round?
Well, I think I touched on it a little bit in the beginning. I think this marks the idea that they're now it could change, right? Like I think you're always going to go for the best player available, right? So if you're able to move Connor Hellebuyck and you're, you know, we'd heard, you know, players like Dawson Mercer or something like that, you're going to want to go for something like that. But I do think that what this signals for the Jets, because I do think the Jets are in a similar situation with Connor Hellebuyck and Pierre-Luc Dubois. You talked about the stuff that we were hearing down here from talking with other people. One of the things that we're hearing, David Pagnotta had said it on our show yesterday, is that I think that the price tag that's going to come along with Connor Hellebuyck, wanting in the neighborhood of $9 million north, is going to limit the amount of teams they want to go to. Just like Pierre-Luc just like Pierre-Luc Dubois, just like Mark Scheifele, these are players that only have one more year of team control left before they're unrestricted free agents. So you get the best return for those players if you can sign and trade them, which limits your market to the teams that they would think about sticking around longer. And because those kind of trades limit what you're able to go out and get, you need to have flexibility with the team that you're dealing with. And so I think in a situation like this, what it marks is that the Winnipeg Jets are going to be okay with the idea that if they can't get the home run players they want, then you are going to give us value in a number of players, and we are going to be able to really build the depth into our roster and the compete type players. And what we've seen, we saw it from Vegas, and yeah, they've got some skilled guys up top, sort of the Winnipeg Jets and players like Kyle Connor and Nikolai Ehlers. The deeper you can build a team with competitive type players, the more likely we're going to be talking about the Winnipeg Jets being that scrappy, grinded out, hard to play against team that is going to have a really good shot at making the playoffs next year, which is, I think, exactly what the Winnipeg Jets brass has really been pushing this entire time. They don't want to dip and fall so low below the playoff line that it takes years to get back there. They're trying to retool. They've said it themselves. And so I think what this deal shows us is that the Jets are going to probably try and take some big swings. Maybe now that they've pulled this off, they're capable of being a little bit more patient or demanding of the big swings. But at the very least, you are going to get back a number of quality players who are going to be NHL ready to jump into your lineup next year and make them a hard to play against offensively responsible team. And I got to say that, again, to what I said at the top of the show, I'm all for the shift in philosophy that I see this trade represents in the Winnipeg Jets being, you know, we've seen them last couple of years, super, super skilled, but when it's really come down and the chips have been on the table, that skill really hasn't got them to where they wanted to go. It'll be interesting if they keep going down this road, and I think they will, building a really hard-nosed, hard-edged team to see where that team can get a Winnipeg Jets franchise over the playoff line and maybe into the playoffs, and being that team that just no one wants to play against. Because the Winnipeg Jets, let's be honest, the last number of years, they haven't been that team that teams have come in and been afraid to play against. It's, you know, quite often wide open hockey. That's how the Jets upper level players like to play. Well, other teams like to play that too, but when the other teams would put down the grinding, clamping down style, it just seemed like the Jets weren't prepared for it. Jets need to have a team that is prepared for that, and it looks like that's what they're trying to build.
Sean, you mentioned Dawson Mercer, who, speaking of breakout seasons, had a huge year for New Jersey, a young player on a team-controlled contract. Would be a great add to Winnipeg. He would be, I'm sure, an ask of the Winnipeg Jets to the New Jersey Devils. And Devils have been a team that had been rumored to be interested in Connor Hellebuyck. We heard just in the hour before we got on the air today that the Devils just announced that Crazy Eights are wild for Timo Meier, an 8-year extension at 8.8 AAV. I do wonder how adding that number onto the ledger of the finance books for the New Jersey Devils might affect their even potential to consider making a move for Connor Hellebuyck.
Oh, massively so. And it brings the question to me that I wonder about this, because I've had this conversation a number of times. I think you and I have talked about it, but Connor Hellebuyck, heading into the playoffs this last year, when I was hosting that first round series, I had a conversation with him and I'd said, what's left to prove for Connor Hellebuyck in the playoffs? And his response to me, because I was expecting him to say maybe I haven't had, the best playoff career. It's time for me to establish that. It's time for me to establish that Connor Hellebuyck is a playoff goaltender, right? And he didn't touch any of that. His whole thing was, there is nothing left for me in my career to prove other than that I'm going to be a Stanley Cup champion. That's the only thing left for him. So he has come out and, declared to the world that he is single-minded in his pursuit for the Stanley Cup. Well, he's in a situation right now where he's going to have to move somewhere. And probably in order for him to move, he's going to have to pick a horse in this race that he thinks is going to get him over that line and to becoming a Stanley Cup champ. In doing so, he's going to have to find a team that not only has a shot at winning the cup, but can fit the kind of money that he wants. So the question that I have going on in my head is Connor Hellebuyck willing to maybe recede from the big numbers that we're hearing that he wants and probably has shown he deserves over the years? I mean, Connor Hellebuyck has shown he should be one of the highest paid goaltenders in the game. But is he so single-minded and dogged in his pursuit of the Stanley Cup that he may take a look here and say, this is the team I want to go to, and that team can't fit a $9 million goaltender. So I'm okay with being a $7.8 million goaltender or an $8.1 million goaltender. That, to me, is the big question here, because the timing for him is terrible in that the salary cap is not going up a lot. In order for teams to make all this work, they haven't had the financial freedom that has come in years past because of COVID hitting, that would have allowed to say, let's just spend the money now and we'll make it up later. So that is the thing that I think is fascinating, is because what we have heard down here is that when the number came out, the market for him cooled quite a bit. And it's insane to me that the market for Connor Hellebuyck could in any way cool, because I think he's the kind of guy that there's a number of teams out there, if they were to pluck him and add him to their roster, they would be a Stanley Cup ready team. So there's a fit there. There's a roster fit. There's places Connor Hellebuyck can go to win that Stanley Cup. I think it's right there. The big impediment to that, though, is trying to fit that salary in there. So would he drop his asking price to make that fit? I don't know. But I do know that I keep hearing down here in talking to a lot of people that market has cooled because of that number. And that just limits Connor Hellebuyck's options in getting to a place where he can win that cup.
Yeah, no, it is a great point. And I thought it was some good insight from you, Rennie, because he has talked almost exclusively about, going forward and really putting himself in the best position to become a champion. He's had the individual accolades, but it just hasn't clicked going all the way in the playoffs. Now, again, it's very difficult, and not everyone ends up winning a cup, and we all know the grind and how hard it is to be that last team standing. But, I do understand him wanting to do that, but that does come with potentially a price, and maybe that makes that trade a little bit more palatable. There always is the possibility that he's traded without the understanding of an extension with another team. And I forgive me, because I read this earlier today, and I don't know who had, I can't remember who threw this out, but we all remember a few years back at the Jersey draft, where Corey Schneider was traded to the Devils for a first-round pick. The Detroit Red Wings are sitting on 9 and sitting on 17. I think both of those would be attractive to Winnipeg. And listen, unless there's some sort of trade, maybe potentially with the Boston Bruins, where Mark Scheifele ends up there and Jeremy Swayman's coming back. I think that obviously makes some sense if you are losing Hellebuck. I think that probably you're going to need to be looking at, the free agent market for a couple of goaltenders and hope that one really pops and can give you close to, you're probably never going to get that level of goaltending if Hellebuck's not there. But I guess, and this can be partly your thoughts or what you've heard from other folks, do you think that there might be interest or an aggressive Kevin Cheveldayoff to, when making these moves, potentially try and get another pick for his scouts tonight in the first round down at Bridgestone?
Well, I mean, if I were the Jets heading in the direction in the philosophy that I think they are, where they're going to try and add team depth and just be a more competitive team, I think the Jets make that bet because the Jets are very confident in their ability to draft and produce stars, right? So if in the meantime, the Jets turn to a philosophy of organizational depth, compete, defensive acumen, becoming an LA Kings type team down the stretch in the meantime here, I think that the Jets are happy to go down that road because they think we know how to draft. We know how to develop. We think that we're going to get stars. We got Patrick Laine. He became a star. We got Nick Ehlers. We turned him into a star. Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connor, the list goes on and on of the guys that the Winnipeg Jets found. And we're not talking about, other than Patrick Laine, we're not talking about 1, 2, 3 picks here. We're talking about Mark Scheifele at number 7 and him being a guy who was kind of off the board at that time. And you're talking about Kyle Connor picked in the late teens. Like, these were not the ideal spots to find superstars, and the Winnipeg Jets went out and found them. So I do think that the Jets have a lot of faith in their ability to do that. So draft picks are always important to them. I am also hearing that, like the top 10 of this draft, that what I've heard over and over again from the scouts is that it's special, like extremely special. Some people say, upwards of the top 15, which the Jets are just outside of, is extremely special, but there's a belief that there's a significant drop-off after that. So it would all go to the idea of the Winnipeg Jets seeing players and a bulk of players they like for a certain number. Like if you're at 9, then you're probably going to get someone that you really like. And if you're the Jets, maybe you make that play. The only thing I would say is it kind of goes counter to what they're trying to do here with these picks is retool, right? Like if you're trading for the 9th pick, that's not a retool, right? That's something that is not going to really affect your team for at least 2, probably 3 years if you're talking about the 9th pick. So it would have to be a player they absolutely loved, because giving away or taking away that 9th pick means that if they were to trade Connor Hellebuck there, get that 9th pick, that what they would not be getting instead of that 9th pick is help right now, which they've been very, very vocal they want in this moment to retool and keep this team competitive. And that, as smart a move as I think that would be, it would be a hindrance to the right now approach that we're seeing from the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I mean, I personally would love to see them do what it takes to add another first rounder, considering where their other prospects are. And as you mentioned, I mean, we've talked to a lot of scouts for the past month. This is a special draft with a number of players that, could really turn out to be stars in the National Hockey League. And I think that time frame with this next generation of Winnipeg Jets probably makes sense. It probably comes down to Hellebuck. And, as I say, I'm not sure that there's a player, certainly goaltending-wise, you're going to be looking to make the most out of, what else is there? Potentially a Korpisalo, although he may very well end up sticking around with LA. And we talked about the possibility of Swayman, which brings us to Scheifele. It has been strange how it seemed pretty quiet about a guy that, has a pretty long history of being very, very effective, putting up points on a regular basis, 42 goals last year. What are you hearing in your conversations about Mark Scheifele? And if you had to give us a sense of maybe a potential, like a percentage likelihood that Mark Scheifele is a Winnipeg Jet at the end of the weekend, where are you on that, Sean?
Oh, I don't know about the percentage in the end of the weekend. The one thing that has always surprised me time and time again, even in real time, even though we should know better with Kevin Cheveldayoff, is he will wait and wait and wait and wait and wait. So all these things that we see as, like deadlines that he needs to move a guy for because he loses a little bit of leverage here or there, he just basically holds on and holds on and holds on to try and send the message to the rest of the league that I'm going to get what I want here, or you are not going to get what I have. So to me, it's almost like, trying to handicap someone being there till the end of the weekend is tricky with Kevin Cheveldayoff, because that deadline will mean absolutely nothing to him. What will mean something to him is if someone is going to come and offer him what he wants in whatever time that takes. So I wouldn't necessarily do that. What I'm hearing is that the market for Mark Scheifele has not been healthy. I'm surprised by that. I truly do think that Mark Scheifele could be the off-season steal for a team if you get him into the right place. Like, Mark Scheifele is part of a leadership group that I think the majority of us take a look at and think hasn't worked out well, right? The Jets can say as much as they want how much they love each other as teammates and how much they enjoy being here and all that kind of stuff. The results that they've got, the kind of fires that have crept up in the media outside of this, very blatantly point to there being a leadership group that is not handling it very well in Winnipeg, right? And so Mark Scheifele is no doubt part of that. But I do think that Mark Scheifele getting to a place, getting a fresh start, and part of a fresh start is sometimes being exposed to new philosophies, exposed to new approaches, exposed to new styles of leadership. I really do think that if Mark Scheifele landed in the right place, and the name, you touched on it, that comes up to me over and over again is the Boston Bruins. I think if you take Mark Scheifele and you drop him into that culture, there's strong personalities that are going to say, hey, welcome to Boston, Mark. We are so happy to have you. This is how we do things here, Mark. And you do things like that, and you're going to love it here, and things are going to be just fine. And I think in a situation like that, Mark Scheifele would entirely fall into line. And I think if you get Mark Scheifele playing the way that he can play at his very peak, and you've got a coach there who's done a good job of that in the short amount of time. You're talking about the Jack Adams coach. I think Mark Scheifele could be the kind of player that next year is scoring 90 to 100 points for a team. And if you extend him down the road, then you've got him for a number of more years. But to me, Mark Scheifele is an extremely capable individual who, when he plays the game the right way, is not only a point producer to the max, but can be a defensive center, focusing on those responsibilities and help all over the ice. He's a guy that if I was another GM, I would be salivating over. And I just wonder if part of this has to do with I kept saying yesterday, Pierre-Luc Dubois was the first domino that needed to fall, right? Well, I wonder if Mark Scheifele is the last domino that needs to fall for the Winnipeg Jets, that the next thing is Connor Hellebuyck, and they're really going to dive into Connor Hellebuyck, and that, maybe, just maybe, Kevin Cheveldayoff has had conversations with teams about Mark Scheifele and said, we're going to get there. We're just not ready to get there right now. Unless you want to throw an offer on the table that absolutely blows me away and we can get this deal done right now. If you want to haggle and hack this out, this is something that's going to have to wait until I'm done with Pierre-Luc Dubois and wait until I'm done with Connor Hellebuyck. So to me, I'm hearing it. I'm hearing that the market hasn't been for Mark Scheifele what people expected it to be. I'm just saying, me personally, I'm not saying those people are wrong. I've talked to a lot of people who've got a lot of sources. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying I have a hard time believing there aren't GMs out there who can take a look at Mark Scheifele and say, there's something there that we could turn into being really special and really help out our team. I think there's an opportunity there, and it's a big one.
Yeah, no, listen, I agree with you. I mean, full disclosure, I think regular listeners know for a long time. As a leader, I don't think much of Mark Scheifele. But as a hockey player, as a guy that can help you put up points, score goals, and help you win hockey games, he absolutely can do that. And listen, if you put a player like that into last year's Boston Bruins with Krejci there, with Bergeron there, that to me was the perfect scenario. I do wonder what that room is like with such significant change. But at the same time, there's big opportunity. And this is a man that this year, regardless of whether he starts the season in Winnipeg or is traded in this offseason or ends up somewhere in the next 24 hours, unless he's extended before the season, which I don't think is going to happen, I think he is going to be playing for a contract. He'll be incredibly motivated to have a monster season, and his agent will like that as well. Rennie, thanks so much for doing this.
Can I say something real quick?
Oh, please do.
Just the guy that I take a look at, and I think that Mark Scheifele could be the next version of that, is like what we saw from Jack Eichel. Like, how many people thought Jack Eichel getting traded to the Vegas Golden Knights was a terrible move, and people kind of scoffed and laughed when he went to Vegas last year and it didn't really work out and they missed the playoffs, and the jokes were like, oh, there you go. You want your team to miss the playoffs. Here's Jack Eichel. To me, Jack Eichel, like, I disagreed with the final Conn Smythe tally. I thought Jack Eichel was the Conn Smythe winner this year. I loved how he went up against Connor McDavid and held his own against him in that second round. This is a guy who became not only the skilled, big, powerful player that everyone knew he was, but kind of got to a mental spot a lot of people didn't think he could get to, because he was under the right situation and exposed to a room with good leadership, the Mark Stones of the world. And that's what you were able to do with Jack Eichel. To me, I could see the exact same thing happening with Mark Scheifele. Again, just to hammer the point home, I think there's a massive opportunity for teams out there if they want to grab Mark Scheifele, if they've got the right situation in the right room.
Ren, great stuff, man. Thanks so much for jumping on. I'll look forward to seeing you in a couple hours just down the street of Bridgestone Arena. Should be a very interesting night.
You betcha, bud. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for doing this. There's our pal Rennie, Sean Reynolds, as I mentioned. If you want some more trade reaction coverage, our buddy Dave Pagnotta joined KNR yesterday after we were finished. You know where to find it on the KNR YouTube channel. A very special guest coming up live with us in just a second. Before we do that, I got to thank our friends at Vita Health Fresh Market for their support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. Of course, Vita Health has great prices on natural and organic supplements, beauty products, groceries, and Winnipeg's largest selection of local products, too. And hey, it's summertime, folks. It's barbecue season. You want some incredible meat to put on the barbecue? Pop down to Vita Health and stock up on some delicious Vita Market grass-fed bison and beef steaks. And few nice formulas as well to help with men's gastrointestinal health. 7 Winnipeg locations, online at myvita.ca, with local delivery options as well. Listen, you don't want to spend time building a fence this summer. Wallace & Wallace has got you covered. They're Winnipeg's fencing and overhead door specialist, and they've been doing it since 1946. Every kind of fence you could possibly need, including vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, or wood available. And then again, if you need a garage door, they've got Winnipeg's largest selection of overhead garage doors. 452-2700 is the number. The Wallace & Wallace team will arrange a time to come out and give you a free estimate. Visit them at wallacefences.com or pop down to their showroom on Lawson Road off of Kenniston. And fellas, hey, if you need to up your menswear game heading into summer, wedding season, and of course the fall that's just around the corner, head on down to F Apparel. Custom suits beginning at just $400, along with chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and an incredible selection of menswear accessories. 15% discount for wedding parties if you're looking for somewhere to make you and the fellas look great for the big day. Find out more online at F Apparel. That's EPHapparel.com, and make an appointment or pop down and see Andrew, Alex, and the fellas at 190 Smith Street downtown. And just before we bring in Murat, shout out to our friends at the Nick and Nicky DQ. Again, it's hot. This summer's been blazing so far. Nothing better to cool down and obviously have a great time with the fam than a trip to one of the 4 Nick and Nicky DQ locations. DQ Northgate, DQ Polo Park, DQ St. Anne's, and the DQ in Niverville. And hey, if you're having a party, what goes better than a DQ ice cream or blizzard cake? Hit them up on Insta at DQ Manitoba if you want to get a custom-made cake for your next coming event with a quick and easy pickup at any of the 4 Nick and Nicky DQs. All right, let's welcome in, live in our temporary studio just down the street from Bridgestone Arena, our good friend and the man that broke the details of yesterday's big trade, none other than Murat of The Athletic. What's going on?
How you doing, Huss?
Doing great. It's good to see you. How's the last few days been for you?
I mean, it's been hectic. The sleep is little. The writing output is big. I've been scanning around your room. You're living well. I'm so excited to do this in person with you as well, man. I mean, it looks good here.
Yeah, well, you know what? I mean, I'll give Remis a lot of credit for figuring out the CTO's got a lot going on behind the scenes. We brought a lot of shit, but frankly, we've needed it all. And listen, I'm really excited to get down tonight because, I mean, there's just something about the draft, the first round in particular. But we've already seen some big moves made. And, I mean, let's focus in on the Winnipeg Jets because it had been a long time coming. Again, I mean, selfishly, I'm sort of sorry that the Dubois drama is over because it's been nothing but a content machine for us. But they finally got to the finish line. You were the first one with the details of the trade. Let's get your perspective on, and we'll hear more from Kevin Cheveldayoff come in a couple of hours when he speaks here in Nashville. But your perspective on the road to the finish line and, of course, the return that Kevin Cheveldayoff and the Winnipeg Jets settled on from the Los Angeles Kings as one of few teams that he was interested and willing to sign a long-term extension.
Yeah, I think that all of that smoke around Montreal last summer was real. And I think that Pierre-Luc Dubois would have loved the idea of playing in Montreal. I think that that's real, that that's a hometown place for him. But if it was easy or if it had been simple with the Montreal Canadiens, that's something that would have gotten done last summer, maybe, over the course of the season or at least before now. The thing is, though, Montreal's situation was they're not quite there yet in their building process. Sure, they pivoted to Newhook, and that'll help for sure. But they were focusing on a package built around futures, first round picks, prospects, that type of play. And Winnipeg made a very bold declaration by trading Dubois to LA for Vilardi, for Iafallo, for that second round pick, and for Rasmus Kupari as well, saying we're trying to win now. And it's a move that addresses the future as well, because those 23-year-olds in Vilardi and Kupari, they'll grow, but they're not taking this big step back. They had all of these assets. They were under all sorts of pressure. Everybody knew they were painted in the corner, and the goal was to win now. And if you're, or at least to compete for a playoff spot now, not throw up your hands at it. So I think that tells you a lot about what they'll look for Mark Scheifele. I think it tells you a lot about what they'll look for Connor Hellebuck. It sets the tone. The crazy thing, Huss, though, I think he pulled a rabbit out of a hat a little bit because I value Vilardi as a player I follow as well, and Kupari, we'll see what he can become. He has to do it 2 more times to make playoffs.
He's getting good at it. He's got practice.
So good, so practiced. But I mean, what are the odds? You know what I mean? And it's a bold move to look this summer in the eye and say, okay, we're going to compete now. But I think that he took a phenomenal first step at it yesterday.
And I will say this. I mean, obviously, we had a little bit of fun with it. But, I mean, originally, this package was, we heard Balhardy and Iafallo, and Dave Pagnotta was with us on a couple days ago when we started off. And credit to him for sort of being on that right off the bat. To add in Kupari, and then, I mean, as I say, the fact that it was a Habs second rounder, I think the irony was beautiful. But it does speak to... I think, listen, I get it. We in the media and certainly fans, very, very impatient at times in 2023. But there's a method to the madness. And I think they found a very happy medium in between getting close and then being patient and grinding and waiting it out to get the maximum spot. If you would have told me a week ago that this would be the package coming back to the Winnipeg Jets, I would have thought that would be on the high side, especially when you add in the pick, just because of the situation that the Winnipeg Jets found themselves in. But, again, Kevin Cheveldayoff has said that, the Winnipeg Jets won't be pushed around in these situations, and if they have to wait it out, they will, but they won't be taking 50 cents on the dollar just because perception is that they have to do this and the player's gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe that. And I think that some of that, the extension in time, because I think that some of the principles for the deal were agreed upon kind of over the weekend. And, I was in the media with Rob Blake yesterday, and I think that they said they were pretty close for a minute there. But going back and forth, once everything was settled, is something that takes a real degree of patience to do. I don't know if you've ever been in like buying a used car or buying a car and, they go to the office and they come back and they go to the office and come back. Chevy makes them go to the office about 8 extra times. You know what I mean? Like that seems to be the way that he operates. And, there was a moment where I thought, okay, there might be conditions on that pick. And there were, all of the details, I think, he did a really good job of going through that process the way that they did. And then actually in terms of the value, last week, when I began to think Vilardi was, almost definitely going to be a part of it, and I follow as well. I mean, you look into Vilardi and, that's an exciting player. He's not perfect. His foot speed isn't elite, that's for sure. If you like your analytics, he had a shooting percentage swell that led to that 23 goals, but his hands are phenomenal. And the way that he catches and releases a puck with a sense of where the coverage is and the way that he can score through traffic because of not just quick hands and release. And he talked about that in the Zoom today too, that it wasn't about his power. I think somebody asked him about the power on his shot. It was about his catch and release. And if you watch the way that he scores his goals, it's going into the middle of the ice and making quick, intelligent decisions that way. That's a projectable player that you like in a top six. And I mean, I follow quality. Kupari, we'll see. I'm really a little bit more patient, I think, when it comes to what his impact is going to be.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that, when you look at Kupari, you realize that this is a guy that's played very well at a very high level in the American Hockey League. Hasn't put up big numbers playing, the most games he's ever played this past season, but in what role, how much he's playing, and how much bigger of an opportunity might he get in Winnipeg, and what that might be able to do for a young player that was a first rounder himself. It's all pretty intriguing. That's just the start of it, though, as you mentioned. Got to figure it out with Hellebuyck, definitely with Mark Scheifele. Let's start with Hellebuyck. I mean, I know you've been talking to people throughout these last few days, and it's been really interesting hearing different people's takes on, the scuttlebutt in and around Hellebuyck. I mean, what's your sense of the market for Hellebuyck right now and the situation the Winnipeg Jets are in heading into tonight? Where, I mean, I still would say if either of these guys are going to get dealt in the next little while, the next 12 hours is probably the most likely time for that to happen because, well, history tells us that, players of that caliber often will be included in trades that, have first-round picks involved at some point. I mean, what's the latest on Helly from what you're hearing?
Yeah, I'm not under the impression that anything is imminent on that front, but I don't know is the truth of it. I think that from what I understand about Hellebuyck having kind of a high-end contract to ask, you look at some of the teams that could conceivably use a goalie, and I think about those New Jersey Devils who signed Timo Meier today. Well, they've got cap space. They do. They have it to absorb his cap hit this season. Most teams would, or many teams would, and they would have the room to extend him as well. But I'm not sure that that's where things necessarily are at. Connor Hellebuyck with a long-term extension or, anything approaching a few years, an extension of some kind at a good cap hit number, tremendously valuable. But I don't think that teams are lining up to pay him $9.5 million well into his 30s. So I like the Devils because they're basically an elite goaltender away from being a juggernaut. I like that example quite a bit. But I'm not, maybe this is a situation where with Dubois off the table, there's a little bit of an intensification. I just don't see a Connor Hellebuyck deadline because, yes, free agency is going to take some options away, but he's the brand name. He's the A+. He's the one that's won the Vezina Trophy and has been a runner-up 2 times. If there's a team that believes that he's the guy, I think that, you can take a little bit more time with that.
New Jersey has been a team, and I had a bit of sticker shock when I heard about the 8-year commitment to Timo Meier and wondering what that does to them. But you're right, though. I mean, they have a number of players. Well, he now, I believe, is the highest paid player on the team. I mean, Jack Hughes has a long-term extension. I mean, Jeffrey Bratt has the long-term extension. And they do have some pretty intriguing pieces. I mean, that Simon Nemec, who was the second overall pick, I mean, that would be a player. And again, is that a win now trade? Not really, but be pretty hard to turn down if they would be considering to do it. Just not sure that they're yet on that. And but I mean, there has to be more teams than the New Jersey Devils that Connor Hellebuyck could help win hockey games, playoff series, and potentially a Stanley Cup.
Yeah, I mean, the Los Angeles Kings would be one as well. you can look around at teams and see some clear holes in net. And, I'm not sure what the cap situation is for, or what types of safety nets, I would say, because a lot of teams will be up against the cap and then they'll have an option. Just like Boston moving Taylor Hall created a bit of cap opportunity. You look at a team like the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Ottawa Senators, the Buffalo Sabres. If Edmonton could find a goalie that they could trust, Skinner is excellent, but was not able to sort of get everything done for them. There are teams that I think for Connor Hellebuck at 6.17 or what the cap hit is for him would be tremendously interested. It's just a situation where if that's a 1-year proposition for them because the idea of 9+ or what have you is tough, then that's where I think things get difficult. I do like New Jersey again because, they've got Luke Hughes as well, right? And they've got a couple of other young players who you can anticipate big extensions for, I think, 1 year from now, 2 years from now, and it goes on, even though they've got a lot of their core locked up. So now might be the time to fit in a $6+ million goaltender. And then you can transition out of that in the future.
I'm going to be fascinated to see what we hear in and around Hellebuck over the course of tonight. And I know everyone will be watching the draft and refreshing their Twitter feeds. And obviously, we'll have the opportunity to maybe talk in person to some people and see what we have. You've had some good scoops already. We'll see if the WPG Murat account can fire anything else out. The one thing that we have not heard, and I'm not sure if you've heard any different, not a lot of traction on Mark Scheifele. And I'm a little surprised at that just because, pull up the hockey DB. It speaks for itself of what he's done. 1 year left, similarly to Connor Hellebuck on a very affordable deal, at least for next year. What are you hearing about Scheifele, and what do you make of that situation as it pertains to the Jets and timing even of opportunity to make that move if they feel that it's time to do it?
Yeah, he's a quality player, and I think that gets so lost in a lot of this discussion because Winnipeg maybe there's a sense in Winnipeg that fans are maybe done with the Wheeler Scheifele window of competition and they're ready to move on. So get him out. He scored 42 goals, and before that he had, I think it was 6 straight seasons of a point per game performance. And I've harped on his defense many, many times, but the key was his defensive issues took away from his offense. It didn't erode it completely. This is a guy who created more than he gave up by and large and helps the team win in a lot of ways. I heard Rennie. I was here in the green room, so to speak, and this idea
the live green room for once.
I love it. This is fresh. And I heard his point that, well, if he's more of one of the guys as opposed to the guy, I think that there's probably some real opportunity for Scheifele to thrive. I'll disagree with you, Rennie. I don't believe in 80, 90, 100 points at this stage for Mark Scheifele, but I do think he could be an important player on a very, very good team. So a little while back, I was basically hearing that folks weren't hearing anything about extension talks or anything kind of imminent on that front. I completely understand why for Cheveldayoff, Dubois was the number one first domino to fall. We'll see Wheeler get not probably moved. I just don't see that happening. He'll be bought out, I'm sure, by the end of Friday. But Scheifele and Hellebuck kind of come in that next window, and I think Scheifele maybe even sooner. The question then again becomes the teams that want him or could make use of his services may have to be a little bit creative with cap to clear for him.
Now that we know what's come back from the Kings trade, do you think that affects at all what the ask would be from the Winnipeg Jets on either Hellebuck or Scheifele? And listen, maybe it's because I'm at the draft and it's an exciting time, and frankly, the Jets have done a pretty damn good job with their first-round picks more often than not. I would love to see this team, if they are making one of those deals, find a way to get another pick in this first round. Do you think that is as attractive to them as it might be to me or some of the fan base? And do you have a sense of, what they're asking for either of those players? Where does it start?
That's a great question. And from a Winnipeg perspective, I wouldn't have that sense of what they've been asking. But I've always assumed the philosophy of the Dubois trade can be used, I think, in this situation where Dubois essentially returned Vilardi, a player who you hope will have a similar impact if he grows and continues in that top 6 role, stays healthy, and then some bonus pieces as well. Iafallo's quality, in a middle 6th role. If you're trading Connor Hellebuck, and Mark Scheifele. You may hope that there's a center or a forward. You need a center back, I think. And the ideal, I think, would be one who could grow into a top 6 success. You're not getting peak Mark Scheifele back for Mark Scheifele. You need to be able to point to your top 6 and say there's reasons for growth there. And then you need goaltending as well. So, when it comes to using New Jersey as an example, I've talked a lot about Akira Schmid, who came in and had a real solid, I think, 20 or so games for them last year, gave them stable goaltending at a time they desperately needed it. Vantage would also be an option. We talk about Jeremy Swayman from Boston, those types of situations. But like one thing that I get frustrated with is perception of value. Pierre-Luc Dubois had a ton of value. And I think that people see Winnipeg painted in the corner and they think to themselves like, oh, well, they're going to get absolutely squat for the guy. That doesn't make sense. He's still fresh from his 25th birthday. He signed long-term. 8.5 is, to me, fair, but I think by the time the cap is $3 million more, like there is a projected increase, not immediately, but within the lifetime of his deal. You're getting the heart of his career from 25 to, let's call it 33, and then you can worry about your problems later. The idea of trading for 1 year of, say, a Mark Scheifele, who's 30 plus at this stage, just on the plus side of 30, and then you either get 1 year of him or you're signing a long-term extension that goes well into his 30s. Despite his pedigree, despite everything he's accomplished in the NHL, I just cannot see that value being as high as a 25-year-old center who you can project growth into.
Well, you know what? You make a great point. And I mean, I think the best example of that just in the last 24 hours was the Tyler Toffoli trade. I mean, Toffoli's got 1 year left on an amazing contract. I think he's making $4 million a season. He had 34 goals and 39 assists last year. And he gets traded for a Shagorovich, whatever his name is, from New Jersey in a third-round pick. And Shagorovich, I believe, it doesn't have a contract. They're going to have to sign him as well. I mean, compare that. I mean, those numbers are better than Pierre-Luc Dubois last year. The fact of the matter is, he is 31 years old and not 25. And, I mean, the Kings were essentially buying not only this upcoming season, but the prime of his career. And that pretty much has been behind. And I think that is the best way of kind of, comparing deals and where players at. And unfortunately for the Jets, Scheifele's a hell of a lot closer to Tyler Toffoli than he is than Pierre-Luc Dubois as far as the where he's at in his career.
Yeah, you don't get Scheifele's 42 goals 7 times in a row. You get a player who's aging, or you only have for 1 year, and you have to worry about the contract as well. And it's frustrating. Like, if I were Mark Scheifele, I would be a little bit frustrated. And you put together that many point-per-game seasons over an inordinate amount of time. You are the guy. You are the number one center on a team that goes deep in the playoffs, and then you never quite, you can never get back there again. And you continually outperform your contract. And now you get to this stage of your career, and, Winnipeg may not be getting massive offers for you, despite the fact that you're still quality. Like all this stuff I'm saying, projecting, you're not getting that value. But right here and now, he did just score 42 goals. And imagine sitting on your couch or working out and getting ready for the next season, thinking about 42 goals and hearing like, well, hey, there's not that much interest in me, says the insiders. Like, come on, that's got to be a tough situation as well. That would be a frustrating sit.
Well, and it's weird for a guy that's had the career that he's had to be in the situation of this year. Really, regardless of where he plays, it's going to be a prove-it year for a guy that's proven it pretty consistently, but it's not proven what he's done in the past. It's where he's at right now and what he can do in the future. And by the way, shout out to whoever in chat mentioned Yegor Shagorovich does have a new 2-year deal with the Flames, 3.1 AAV. And, and listen, his quote there is he's so happy to be joining Calgary. I mean, listen, coming to Winnipeg or Calgary compared to other spots might not be the sexiest place, but I think this goes back to what we're talking about with Vilardi and certainly I'll follow and Campari. I mean, the players coming here, there is opportunity in spades here in Winnipeg on a team that does have some pretty quality talent around them for the guys that are coming here. So as much as they might have to invest in a North Face jacket or something like that for the winter, as opposed to what they've got in LA, where the Winnipeg Jets are, I mean, these guys that are acquired for a key piece like Pierre-Luc Dubois are going to be given every opportunity to be difference makers and probably play an even greater role than they ever had in LA and probably would have had this upcoming season if they stayed put.
I mean, you think about Gabriel Vilardi, who broke into the league. His career was as a center until he, joined the Kings, played center a little bit for a little while. At that time, his defensive game wasn't up to par, and they looked at his, lack of foot speed overall and thought, okay, well, let's move him over to wing. He develops, he gets over the injury concerns. He has a relatively healthy season this year, and really a breakout season in all sorts of ways. Thinks the game well, offensive chemistry with Fiala largely, and the tap-ins, the quick hands, and outthinking goaltenders around the net. All of that's phenomenal, but he has yet to get back to center in a full-time role despite growing as a 200-foot player. So if you're looking at the Winnipeg Jets depth chart right now, there's an opportunity there. If you do see yourself as a center, or at least would like the opportunity that you get, whether it's Connor, Ehlers, Perfetti, or Niederreiter, you're getting a quality winger in that situation. If you're not the center, you're still probably getting at least one of them for your line mate. For a guy who sort of said that he got a bottom six role last year, that's growth, that's opportunity, and it's at a time in his life, 23, where he's on the cusp of his prime. I believe that a substantial raise in minutes might not see his numbers explode because there's some puck luck in his goal scoring totals, and I want to warn people about that, but it will be tremendous growth for the player, and I think that that's coming.
By the way, I'm getting killed in the chat, and justifiably so. I completely Don Cherried his name. Cherry,
you did Don Cherry.
I did. And you know what? I'm usually pretty good about that. I don't know why this guy has always been. Maybe we don't talk enough about Jersey, but yes, Sharon Govich, JD Paul, thank you for giving me the phonetic pronunciation. I will not butcher that name. In fact, I'll just try not to talk about him going forward, but that was a very important phonetics lesson for yours truly here. Murat, let's look into tonight. The Jets are on the clock at 18 as expect. I mean, that's as it stands right now, and obviously things can change. We were going to have Ryan Kennedy coming up in a few minutes from the Hockey News, who's going to join us here to give us his thoughts on the draft and what's available. Sounds like there's going to be some good talent in the midpoint of that first round. What do you make of the Jets' 18th pick, as well as opportunities to, potentially do a little bit more? They don't have a second rounder right now, and I'm sure they would have loved that second rounder that came in the draft, that came in the trade yesterday to be this year's. But what do you make of, what's at hand, regardless of Hellebuck and Scheifele's situations, which I'm sure they'll be getting some calls on?
Yeah, I mean, assuming that 18 is where they pick and their only first-round pick. I had a chance to talk to Mark Hillier yesterday, a Jets director of amateur scouting, and the fun piece about that was getting to talk about how the depth of the crop of first-round talent goes to about 20. Like, everybody talks about Connor Bedard, and Matvei Michkov is, certainly getting a lot of attention. There's plenty of other top 5, top 6 talent that are really projected to be elite. But there's this sense of like that very good next wave isn't shallow either and goes, just a few picks beyond Winnipeg at 18. So I think that they're, sort of salivating at the possibility that somebody they've got ranked 9th or 10th could become available to them. And I think that's exciting for them. It's a forward-heavy draft at that spot for sure. I think that one of the other unique things that came out of that conversation is, Winnipeg always talks about best player available. We thought that they were all about the Finns for a while, all about the Swedes. There's, clearly they take a lot of American talent as well. But really for them, it's just taking the best player on their list at that stage. For the first time that I can remember, Mark Hillier answered a question, I think for me on that, saying, well, if there were a WHL guy, and we have them ranked evenly, being from close to home could be a tiebreaker in that situation.
That is really interesting. And, we were unfortunately on the air when Mark spoke yesterday and wasn't able to get. I wanted to ask you about that. And, from talking to people in the organization and around the Jets, and maybe it's just the way that things have gone the last couple of years, maybe what's happened with certain personalities. I mean, regardless of why, I'm not sure. I do get that sense that, maybe we are at a point that they are going to spend, to use that point, at least a tiebreaker. I mean, again, the job of the scouts is to get the best hockey player. but there's a lot that goes into it. There's a reason why they spend so much time interviewing these guys. I mean, at a certain point, what does the interview matter of what happens on the ice? Well, there's what sort of a teammate you are, how you might fit in within the Winnipeg Jets, our community, all that. And I'll say this. I mean, they've been doing this for over a decade now. I think probably you learn a few lessons, and I think in some ways that might be shaping the philosophy going into tonight.
Yeah, and it's tough to know how much of that. I guess Mark Hillier made this really great point. It was about a different topic, but even though there are trends, and even though there's situations like this where you might look at the roster, and he wasn't talking about this idea of WHL when he said this, but every one of these players is an individual. They might fit into draft trends. They might project as a certain thing, but they all come with their story. They're people. They're people who have values that they got from their families and their coaches, and they, some of them love the idea of big cities and some don't. Everyone comes to this with a unique situation, and I think it would be important for Winnipeg to know what those sorts of things are, to the degree that 17 and 18-year-old players know what those sorts of things are. I go back and forth, though. It's hard for me to say you got to pick close to home just because, I don't know, I grew up in Manitoba. If you gave me a chance to go see a different part of the world at the age of 25 for an awful lot of money, I mean, it'd be curious. I'm sure I'd come home. It's my home, but I'd at least think about it. And does that, you know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. Listen, I think it's more the reaction to the fact that, and again, why... Listen, we weren't talking about this in the first few years when most of these players were re-signing extensions here. So, I mean, I think probably the direction of the club, maybe the atmosphere around the team, I think that you cannot ignore that. But at the same time, if we're talking about living in Winnipeg as opposed to other places, I would have to think that you might have a better chance of really getting people to buy in, appreciating it, if maybe they are, a little closer to home, if you will. That being said, it's about getting talent on your hockey club, guys that can help you win hockey games. And if you can keep them around longer than the 7 years of team control, I guess that is a bonus. Murat is with us. Great to see everyone in chat. Folks, pushing huge numbers again today. Hit that red subscribe button if you haven't already. Welcome to everybody new. Winnipeg Sports Talk in Nashville, presented by our Cool Bet throughout this week. But we're not just doing it this week. We're Monday to Friday, 1 o'clock live on YouTube. You can also find WST wherever you get your favorite podcast. Search Winnipeg Sports Talk and press subscribe. Murat, hang tight. I just want to thank Princess Auto and a couple sponsors. We've got a couple clips from Vilardi and Pierre-Luc Dubois I just wanted to play. If you got a second to listen to these on the way out. Hey, of course, Bombers in Montreal on Canada Day, and then back at home next week, looking to start a new winning streak at home. Of course, if you're heading to the Bomber game, you got to get there early for the Princess Auto tailgate party. 2 hours before every game, $3.50 pop and hot dogs, $5 beers, great entertainment, the OB pregame show as well. Definitely the place to be. Huge thanks to Princess Auto for the great support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. And, of course, your Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Check them out online at princessauto.com or pop down and see them at one of 2 Winnipeg locations. Our friends at Consolidated Supply right now, busy as the leaders in irrigation systems and, of course, artificial turf. For those of you that maybe want that dream putting green in your backyard, give Spicy and Joe a call. They'll get you set up. Also, if you've got a need for a golf cart, whether for actually golfing or whipping around from site to site out at wherever you spend your summers, they're the club car dealer in Manitoba. Got some great deals on that and other awesome options for your property, including hot tubs, beautiful outdoor kitchens, and they are the leaders in small engine repair and supply. Pop down and see them at their new showroom, open to the public, 1395 Niagara Road East, or find out more online at cte.ca. As I mentioned, we were holding off to get clarity on who the trade was. I guess you need a contract and what numbers these players are going to wear. But if you do want to get a Gabriel Vilardi or an Alex Iafallo jersey after the big trade, you know where to do it. Royal Sports down at 750 Pembina Highway, Manitoba's true sports superstore. Tons of great Jets gear and Bomber gear as well as the season's now underway. And in addition to the best selection you will find literally anywhere when it comes to licensed merchandise for your favorite teams, local and around North America and the world. They've also got a lot of great stuff to spend your time outside. Soccer, softball, baseball, disc golf, tons of bikes. It's all there at Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway. And give them a follow on Instagram at Royal Sports Pembina for the latest merchandise drops and sale information, including their world-famous tent sales coming up. And just before we hear from a little bit more from the newest Jet and the most recent former Jet, shout out to our friends at Boston Pizza. Of course, Bombers in action on Saturday. If you're looking for a great place to watch the game inside with some AC, with the big game on the big screen with big sound, it's always Boston Pizza is your best spot. Pop by your local BP for ice-cold schooners, delicious BP wings, and gourmet pizzas and more. And hey, if you are staying at home, you can always order online at bostonpizza.com. All right. Remo, I know we got a couple more clips of the newest Jet, Gabriel Vilardi. Why don't you tee these ones up, because I know you cut them earlier for our viewers and listeners' listening pleasure.
Sorry, we're going with Vilardi.
Yeah, let's do a couple Vilardi, and then we'll do our farewell to PLD, the official end to Dubois drama on WST. What a run it's been.
Okay, we played the two, right? Last one was taking a step forward. Do we play this one on? We played the injury history one. I think this is playing center or wing.
Yeah, that's something that Murat talked about. This would be a perfect one right now.
I haven't talked to Cheveldayoff yet. Not too sure where they're going to have me slated, if it's wing or center. Played a bit of both last year, played the playoff center. I think that's another good thing that I kind of got from my time in LA. They had a bunch of centers, they had center prospects. They moved me to the wing and kind of learned to play both. So wherever they want me, I'll play. I just want to help the team, however that is, and I feel comfortable in both positions. Yeah,
and as I mentioned earlier, it's got to be music to the ears of Rick Bowness. I mean, a guy coming here, not easy to get traded, the first time. But the fact that he does have both of those options, and a player that seems like looking forward to that opportunity if it was given to him. And certainly there's the possible. Dubois is already gone. Scheifele might be. I have a feeling there will be that opportunity if he can jump up and take advantage of it.
Yeah, definitely. I think he'd be able to get looks, especially the way the roster is constructed. I had a quick look at, I think, Hockey Reference, and I think his face-off percentage is mid-40s to this point in his career. So I wonder about how Rick Bowness will interpret that.
Good point.
He's a big face-off guy. But at this point, like he says, I mean, he's played a lot of wings. So maybe at this point he's a little stronger, a little more savvy, and can improve upon those numbers. I don't know what goes into that. But it was good of him, the same way that I'm sure PLD is trying to ingratiate himself in Los Angeles at this point, to step up and say, well, yeah, my girlfriend's from SoCal, but I'm very excited to come up.
Do we have that one, Reem?
I don't know. That one might be at the end. I don't know if I got that far, but that was, they asked him about it. He's like, well, my girlfriend's from SoCal, so we'll see how.
I'm excited. Not so sure about her. Hey, you got to have a little bit of fun on that and a little bit of a sense of humor on that. I think anyone would understand if you've been plying your trade in LA and you're like, here's your ticket to Winnipeg, a bit of a shock. Hey, he's a Canadian guy. He knows what it's like. He seemed to, look forward to playing in a hockey market with that sort of attention. You know what? If you're a young woman that grew up in Southern California and met a hockey player, maybe it wasn't part of the plan to head up to Winnipeg. You got one more of Vilardi before we move on to PLD?
We got another clip, two more of Vilardi. We'll do this first one. So he's an RFA right now, and he was asked if he had any RFA negotiations so far with LA, and I guess expectations for what's up with the Jets.
Well, I mean, a little different this year. Obviously, last year it was just there was not much negotiation. It was just, here, take this, and then take it, thank you. And then this year it's a little different, obviously because of my season, but there wasn't much from LA. And now just moving forward, I mean, the Jets traded for me, so obviously they want me. I want to be there. I'm excited, and hopefully we can get something done here soon. But for the most part, I mean, it's just my agent. I don't really know much.
I had to laugh talking about the way things went last year with LA before sort of a breakout season. Tell you what, I mean, I think from an agent perspective, I think they've got to be somewhat excited because they know how important this player is to the Winnipeg Jets, the price that was paid to get him. And, whether they talk about something long-term right away or something shorter term, I think it's quite clear that there's a priority to keep this guy in the mix as a very important part of the team. And you get paid for that in the National Hockey League.
Yeah, 100% you do. there's opportunity here. I don't think he's eligible for UFA status until 2027. So even if he pulls the most, get contracts up until a year before that move, like we've seen, 2026, that's still a few seasons of Winnipeg Jets hockey bare minimum, depending on how it all goes. So they do have options in terms of whether they go short term, 3 years, or even much longer. We'll see. I guess probably if I were him, I'd want to get a sense of how I fit in with my new teammates before going super long term. But you do know that you're an important part of the future, and you do know that Dubois was given up to get you, and you probably believe in yourself quite a bit after popping 20-plus goals as well. So that would be an exciting time, I think, to be talking money with the Winnipeg Jets.
No doubt about that. All right, there's one more from Balhardy.
We got one more clip. So he's coming with two teammates, Alex Iafallo and Rasmus Kupari, and was asked to give his scouting report on the two other new Winnipeg Jets.
No, it's great to come with other guys that obviously will help all of us just kind of settle in hopefully a little sooner. Both really good guys off the ice, goes without saying. And then Alex, he's kind of like he does everything. He's very good defensively, very trustworthy guy, and sneaky skill. But he does everything really well. And then I think Raz is just very speedy guy and lots of skill. Just kind of that raw speed. He's very plays very hard too. They're both good guys, and they both work hard off the ice as well.
All right, good stuff from Tikona Pauly. Very appreciate you saying you'll do whatever it takes to help the team and the new players. That was it is interesting. When one player comes and three come the other way, you sort of have a group, a little bit of a bond, and I imagine just from a human perspective, might make it a little easier to make such a big change in one's playing career when you're going with a couple guys you've gone to battle with for a few seasons.
I mean, it's nice to know people. I've moved cities before, and if you have some sort of home base, somebody who you've known from outside of this experience, I mean, that's got to be a good thing. And just on Iafallo for a moment too, I want to say, my understanding is that the coaching staff in LA absolutely loved this guy. He was the human deodorant, I think they called him, because he cleaned up all of the messes and made everything kind of more amenable on whatever line they put him on. So there's a real strong value there. I've heard some concerns about Kupari's hockey sense a little bit, saying he's big, he's fast, he can do so many different things, he's always in the mix, but what is he getting accomplished while he's there? We'll have to see. I don't want to cap a 23-year-old player who's still clearly in a development path. But I just wanted to share what I've sort of heard from that neck of the woods.
Good stuff. Well, we'll certainly have a lot of time in the future this summer heading into next season to talk about the newest Jets. Let's talk about the dearly departed PLD, Pierre-Luc Dubois. Remo, I know he spoke late yesterday after the deal, and obviously, spoke highly about his time in Winnipeg, as much as that might shock people watching this program.
Yeah, Murat, you were actually first up on the call asking the questions. And,
that's right.
And you asked him why this offseason was a good time to let the Jets know, hey, we got to speed things up here and, get a trade done.
There's the 1 year left before becoming UFA. But, without a contract, if I had a contract, it could have been a different story. But without a contract, there needs to be a new one signed. And we thought that it was a good time to let the team know that, this is the route we want to go. Obviously, just me wanting it wouldn't have worked. We needed to work together. And, it got to this point now where obviously I get traded here. But we wanted to be as clear as possible from the start with the Jets and with the whole organization that this is the route we want to take. And from that moment on, we kind of worked together to get to this point.
What did you think about what Dubois had to say post deal?
I mean, I see the comments in the thread saying "boo," and there's more than one of you. And I don't know if it was a non-answer or if there's anything to it. I actually want to think about it, because he talks about not having a contract. Well, that's a situation he arranged for himself by just taking the QO last year as well. So does that necessarily mean that that's why and when and all that sort of stuff? I think it's clear that he has wanted to expedite his exit, or his exit from Winnipeg, or his opportunity in another city. I think he's very excited about LA, and I think that's been a plan for a long time now. So I don't think he gave us the whole truth with that one.
I know there was one other clip from yesterday, Reem.
Yes, Murat asked Pierre-Luc Dubois, what do you say? Why not Winnipeg? Like, what was the problem there with Winnipeg?
Yeah, there were some Wi-Fi issues in the LA hotel that we were doing that from, like the LA Kings hotel here in Nashville, to be clear. So it may have been as simple as why not Winnipeg that he heard. It may have been more context about that.
Yeah. Here, where is
Yeah,
this?
I think throughout the whole process, there's a lot of questions I had to ask myself, and it's nothing. I think Winnipeg. I think it's. I saw an opportunity with the LA Kings that to me was like a dream come true. To be able to play with this organization, to be able to play with this team, to get to work and play with some players that I looked up to when I was a kid. I think it's going to be a really fun experience. And, I spent 3 really great years in Winnipeg. I met unbelievable people, played with some teammates that I'll keep in touch with for the rest of my life. And I can't thank anybody enough there, from the whole organization to the players to the fans, for their support from day one in year one when it was more of a struggle. And, they stayed and supported me. And I appreciate that a lot. And, now I'm really looking forward to this new chapter. And like I said, it's more, I'm looking forward and not necessarily back.
No, I appreciated the support so much. Spent the last 2 years trying to get out of town. I mean, hey, it is what it is. I mean, listen, at times was, an incredible player. And I think back to his performance in game 1 of the playoffs, that was the guy. It was almost hard to watch that, knowing what was about to come. Frankly, I think it's a little easier to have this trade, seeing the way that series ended and knowing that there's the good and the bad. And I'll say this, he's, by doing what he's done for the second time, getting the trade to where he wanted to go, getting the big time extension. I mean, there's no more questions now. It's time to produce. It's time to do it at an elite level and do it for a long time. And, I do think about the way that he played after the trade for Patrik Laine and how poorly that season was. I'll be fascinated to see how things go, but it's now on this young man to really be that player that a number of teams have thought that he could be, and now the LA Kings have invested a huge amount of money in his future.
Yeah, I think a few things about this. Like, I believe in the player. I really sincerely do believe in the hockey player. 50 games of first-line center caliber by any metric you want to use, whether points or WAR or any of the analytics. This guy was a force playing at a number 1 center level for 50 games. He fell off badly, in a bad way, starting about mid-January for a couple of months there. And you can't have that substantial portion of a season go that ineffectively as an $8.5 million center. You just can't. But I believe that at 25 years old, a big guy, a strong guy, that some of that is simply consistency and learning to be consistent with the wear and tear of it. So I think this is going to be a very good hockey player going forward. There's a part of me that I support the employee's right to say, like, or maybe a hockey, let's not make this about labor. Let's make it about hockey. Like, I support a hockey player's right to say, my career is short. My time in this league is short. I'm going to do my best within the rules to go to a place that I want. Like, I believe in that to a certain degree, but that doesn't come without consequence. That absolutely does not come without consequence. He's asked his way out of 2 teams now. He's moved out of 2 cities. He's got this big, okay, well, I'm so happy.
He did it in junior too, for the record.
So this is, clearly a pattern with the fellow. So either he's finally got what he's wanted, or he's a person who struggles to feel like he has what he wanted. Regardless, this reputation that he walks into this situation with, you can't hand wave it away. It is real. It is part of the story of Pierre-Luc Dubois. He will need to overcome it. Some nice words about being excited, or it wasn't Winnipeg, or any of that stuff doesn't do it. It's going to take months, years, playoff runs, all of that sort of stuff. And if he doesn't do it, then he'll always be the guy that just wanted out of places.
Pretty juicy. The Kings are going to be the Jets' second home game on the schedule in that first week. Bring it on. And I'll tell you what, though, I'm with C-Mac. I think this is a great comment. I'm happy PLD didn't pull a Gaudreau. allowed the Jets the space to make the trade, gave them 5 to 6 teams, set the Jets up to get the best return they could for him given the situation. And I think the return that the Winnipeg Jets did get does not happen if, he sort of Trouba's his way. It's one team and one team only. And as I said, the PLD legacy will continue, and the Patrick Laine trade tree has just been expanded with the deal yesterday. Murat, I know you got to get down to Bridgestone because we're going to be hearing from Kevin Cheveldayoff in about an hour. We're going to be finishing up the show right away. Thank you so much for doing this. It's great to see you, and I will see you again very shortly when we get down and see what happens tonight on the draft floor.
I love it. I'm so glad you're here, man.
Thanks so much for doing this. Check out Murat's got some great coverage on the trade and everything else going on here around the Winnipeg Jets and the NHL at The Athletic, along with the entire athletic team that is here in Nashville as well. Make sure to check that out and give him a follow at WPG Murat. All right, we're not finished, though, yet. We do have Ryan Kennedy of the Hockey News. We're focusing so much on this deal. There's some players to be picked tonight. Ryan's one of the best in the biz when it comes to breaking down the players that are on the clock tonight, starting with Connor Bedard. Just before we get to that, I do want to give a big thanks to our friends out at Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge. We're just about getting into the prime time for fishing season. We're going to be heading there in about a month. If you're thinking about a world-class opportunity to head out onto the water with as great as the world-class fishing is, world-class hospitality as well from the Aikens Lake team. Find out more, aikenslake.com, or hit them up on Twitter for availability. A little bit left this year and lots next year right now, booking into 2024 out at Aikens Lake Lodge. And hey, we got the Rocket Mortgage Championship coming up on the PGA Tour this week. Of course, when we talk golf, we do it for our friends at Breezy Bend Country Club. Check out today's lock shop if you want some picks from myself, Dusty, and Pat Gregoire. And you can hit that up on the Cool Bet lines. Of course, Breezy Bend, unbelievable spot for your family to golf. Full right now. There is a waiting list for next season. If you want more information on that waiting list and maybe making Breezy your long-term golfing home, hit up Corey Johnson at the clubhouse or find out more online at breezybend.ca. And hey, a big shout out to our friends at the Winnipeg Goldeyes. Fish back on the road this week, but coming back next week. We'll be back. We're going to spend some time. Stay tuned to Winnipeg Sports Talk. We'll let you know about our upcoming group night. We're going to pick a night in July and invite all of you to come out at a special price to join us. Have a few little brown jugs over at Craft Beer Corner, I'm sure. Should be a heck of a lot of fun. Goldeyes.com for group tickets, suites, individual tickets, and, of course, team on the road this week, but back next week. And looking forward to catching up with our pal Andrew Collier, the GM, for the latest on the fish. We will hit Cool Bet lines in a minute, as well as touch on Aikens Lake. But just before that, cheers to our friends Murat. I wish we could have just cracked a cold 1919 or generic lager from our friends at Little Brown Jug. But we'll do that once we get back to the city when this is all over, because it's going to be a very busy next couple days for all of us here in Nashville. Of course, you can head down to the tap room, check out that beautiful new patio at Little Brown Jug, check out all their new beers, and make a point if you're looking for something to do on Saturday. Obviously, it's Canada Day, and they've got the What's Golden pop-up series with their friends over at Shorty's Kitchen. Noon to sunset every Saturday. What's Golden? Great entertainment over at Little Brown Jug. All right, to get ready for tonight's draft, let's welcome in Ryan Kennedy of the Hockey News for a little primer on what's to come after Connor Bedard goes off the board first to the Chicago Blackhawks. Draft night, who better to welcome into Winnipeg Sports Talk than Ryan Kennedy of the Hockey News. Ryan, what's going on? Thanks so much for doing this. It's great to have you on the program.
For sure. Great to be on in person in Smashville.
Yeah, no doubt. Hey, listen, just before we get to the picks that are be going off the board and your rankings, obviously a huge trade for the Winnipeg Jets in the last 24 hours. Pierre-Luc Dubois going for the Kings. You've been doing this for a long time. There's two first-rounders that are former first-rounders coming to the Winnipeg Jets, and Gabe Vilardi, who I think is the centerpiece of this trade, along with Rasmus Kampari. Fill us in a little bit on those players, what you remember about them, and kind of what you've seen from them at this stage in their careers.
Yeah, I mean, Vilardi, as you mentioned, probably the centerpiece here. Here's a guy that in his draft year, at one point, was considered maybe top 5, and then he had some injury issues, and he wasn't the greatest skater. But big kid, can do a lot of things for you. And now that he's gotten on track, you could almost call him a late bloomer, but it's more so that he had injuries throughout his young career that held him back. But I feel like, in the past year or two, he's really become the player that we thought he would become. And that's great for Winnipeg because obviously you're losing a pretty top-notch center in Dubois. And in Vilardi, he's not at that level yet, but given the right circumstance and given the playing time, maybe in the next couple of years he becomes that guy. Kupari, one of a number of first-rounders that LA made, kind of in the past sort of 5-6 years. And I think, from the Kings' perspective, they put themselves in a position to make this trade where you can give up a Kupari who has had a pretty decent AHL career. I remember in his draft year him being a strong skater and somebody with some intrigue to him. The fact that the Kings could give up those two young players because they have a number of other youngsters led by the likes of Quentin Byfield, and then, and Arthur Kaliev, along with those veterans they still have, your Kopitars, your Dowdies, now Pierre-Luc Dubois. Really great trade for both sides, I'd say.
Yeah, well, certainly some excitement in Winnipeg, considering what the Jets were up against and what had long been rumored that they were going to get stuck with sending him to the Montreal Canadiens for 50 cents on the dollar. It looks like the return was pretty good. Let's talk about the first round tonight. I know we've spent a lot of time talking about Bedard, but considering your experience, just historically, how great of a prospect is this young man?
I mean, he's right up there, right? Like, you talk about McDavid and Austin Matthews as probably, the only ones in the past decade plus you can compare him to. I mean, the fact that he can produce like he does on a Regina team that didn't have any weapons really surrounding him. He had Stanislav Savozil on defense. There was a couple of guys on that team, but not a super strong cast. You see him at the World Juniors. He absolutely destroys the competition. And it's not just the release on his shot, which is obviously epic. It's right up there with Austin Matthews already. But it's the compete level. Like I was in Halifax for that medal round, and when Canada needed a goal, in overtime no less, you could see it in Bedard. He was like, I am getting the puck, I'm going through whoever I have to, and I'm ending this game. I am angry it got this far. And, I mean, that's what you want in a superstar player. That's the Sidney Crosby factor. That's that Connor McDavid drive. You want somebody that wants to be a difference maker. And I think that plus all his other skills, it is what makes Bedard so special.
He's going to get feted, but as soon as he's picked, then it gets interesting. Is Fantilli no-brainer number 2 in your book?
To me, he is. I mean, you lead the entire NCAA in scoring as a freshman, and one that was 17 when the season began, and you also come in at 6'2", with amazing skating. I don't know what else you can ask for, and especially he ends the year winning gold with Canada at the World Championship, the men's worlds, mind you, not the under 18s, the men's. And he has a crucial goal against Latvia to boot. To me, it's like, I don't know what else you would want.
Probably the most intriguing player in the draft for many reasons is Michkov, the Russian. I've been asking all of the draft guests we've had on for the last little bit, if he was from Moose Jaw and not Moscow, how would that change where he's selected tomorrow? And where do you have him ranking up, just frankly, on talent alone, regardless of everything else surrounding him, up against the Fantillis, Bedards?
Yeah, on talent alone, I mean, he's right behind Bedard. And again, if he was from Moose Jaw, then I think the interesting conversation you have is between him and Fantilli, where you say, okay, well, Michkov's a winger, Fantilli's a center. Michkov is 5'9" ish. Fantilli is 6'2" ish. So, if you want the high upside, maybe you go with Michkov. If you want to go with the more traditional lottery pick, Fantilli would be your guy. But at least in that scenario, it's an honest debate, and as you say, you're taking geopolitics out of it. But I mean, the kid's a super talent one way or another.
Do you think he? We've always seen him as being a part of the top 5, but there's been a lot of mocks that have him falling, and I think it's because of the reasons that we just mentioned. When we get to Bridgestone tonight, do you think he makes it past 5 in the Montreal Canadiens?
What's funny? I feel that he doesn't make it past 5, but I don't know what team is going to take him, and I don't know if that team is currently slated to pick in the top 5, because it feels like the closer we're getting, the more teams are getting a little more serious, saying it's not that long a wait. And Washington, for example, there's a team that their name's been linked to him a lot, and I think they're at 8, and I'm sure they realize that a team like Montreal or even Philadelphia could make a swing. So I wonder if that's part of the intrigue on night 1, is the race to get Michkov rather than teams passing on him.
Ryan Kennedy, the Hockey News, with us, getting ready for the first round of the draft tonight at Bridgestone here in Nashville. Let's focus in on the Winnipeg Jets. They're picking at 18th right now, barring any sort of a trade where they have another pick or move up. We've heard a lot about the depth of this draft. What sort of a player, just talent-wise, do you think might be there? And I know you guys have done some mocks. Is the guy or two that you think might be a good fit, or you think that the Jets, based on their history, might jump at if available?
Yeah, I feel like based on the past couple of drafts for Winnipeg and looking at our future watch, they can kind of go best player available. I wouldn't be surprised if they took a defenseman just to kind of even things out, because you got Lucius at the top there and Rutger McGroarty, who are both forwards.
Brad Lambert too, with that second pick thanks to the Andrew Kopp trade.
Exactly, Brad Lambert, another forward with high-end ability. So maybe it's time to go high on a defenseman again. And this is kind of a weird draft for that, because there's not a lot of top-end guys. Usually you see a couple in the top 10, at least 3 or 4. This year, we're probably only going to see one. And, in terms of talent, maybe that's higher than it should be. But Axel Sandin Pellikka, smaller guy, but super talented. We had him 14 in draft preview, but who knows? Because you got Tom Villander, another Swede, who really came on as the season progressed. That's a name that's been bandied about a lot as sort of one of the new top defenders, David Reinbacher of Austria being the sort of consensus top defenseman right now. Mikhail Gulyayev from Russia, tremendous offensive defenseman. But again, you do have that Russian factor. Does Winnipeg feel confident that they could get him over in a couple of years? Who's to say? But he would be in that range. And then for me, Lukas Dragicevic, who plays for Tri-City in the Dub, great offensive defenseman, has some pretty decent size. I know there's some flaws in his game, but he's a young kid. We had him at 18 in draft preview, so that lines up perfectly there.
Ryan, everyone has their own favorites. Everyone has a guy that maybe they're not as high on. Is there a player that you've sort of planted your flag in as being one of your guys that you think is going to provide great value, as opposed to where he's picked based on what we're hearing? And is there a guy maybe that you think I would probably stay away from compared to where the consensus is?
Yeah, I guess at the high end, the player that I've really liked all year is Oliver Bonk, the defenseman from the London Knights in the OHL, son of Radek Bonk, the former NHL defenseman. I just feel like with Bonk's game, he actually played Junior B the year before because the Knights were loaded and they wanted him to get ice time. And that was a great move for him because he stepped right into their lineup this year, had a lot of success, plays a 200-foot game. Part of me, I keep going back to I wonder if he could be the next Jacob Slavin, which is not the sexiest thing in the world, but Jacob
helps
Slavin,
you win a lot of hockey games.
Low key, one of the best defensemen in the game. So, Bonk's seen as kind of a late first rounder, but to me, it's I don't know, maybe he's the best defenseman in the draft when we look back in 5-6 years. And then kind of digging in the crates a bit. The player that I keep mentioning because I love him so much is Jason Shogabee from War Road High School in Minnesota. That's the alma mater of TJ Oshie. Jason Shogabee broke TJ Oshie's school scoring record this year. Dynamic playmaker. I believe he's committed to University of Minnesota Duluth, if I'm not mistaken. And, that place has just been a factory for talent lately. So for me, Shogabee, he's a top 100 guy. But at the end of the day, right now he's listed at 153 pounds. So obviously he's got some meals that he needs to partake in. He's not the kind of guy that's going to step right into your lineup. But in 4 or 5 years, maybe you've got an ace.
Certainly considering the Jets' history of taking Minnesotan players.
Dylan Sandberg.
Remember that name, folks, when the picks go off tomorrow and, of course, on Thursday. Ryan, thanks so much for popping in. Just fill people in, of course, on what you and the gang at the Hockey News has. I know some big expansion. We got a guy now in every market for all the teams. Our pal Jacob Stoller doing a great job covering the AHL. Fill people in where they can get your content and everything going on.
Yeah, so we got the main site, as always, thehockeynews.com, where you can find all our web content. You can get a subscription there as well. And then we have the team site. Shout out to Carter Brooks and his crew there, doing all sorts of Jets things. So, find me on Twitter at THNRyanKennedy. And, check us out on newsstands. A lot of fun stuff coming up.
Ryan, thanks so much. Enjoy Draft Week in Nashville. We appreciate you.
Will do. Thanks for having me.
All right, great stuff with Ryan Kennedy. Appreciate him jumping on. And, folks, we got to get down to Bridgestone, just down the street for the draft tonight. IC guys are going live at 6 o'clock, I believe. We're going to try and jump on with them in the first half hour for a few minutes if everything works out. But I do want to thank our friends over at Assiniboia Downs. Normally, we're getting into our picks. We'll double up our picks coming back on Monday when we are back, or I guess Tuesday after the long weekend. But Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday racing right now at Assiniboia Downs. Make an appointment to get in that amazing dining room for that prime rib buffet that we love so much. 885-3300. And, of course, you can check it all out at asdowns.com. And if you want to maybe bet the ponies while you watch the draft tonight, hpibet.com will make that happen. And check out the Assiniboia Downs YouTube channel for tips from Kirk and Stretch. And that begins 6:45 tonight, post time, 7:30 p.m. And listen, normally we really get into the cool bet lines tonight, but I want to point you to yesterday's Lock Shop, which was a kind of an extensive breakdown of some of our favorite picks for tonight's NHL draft. I'll tell you a couple ones that I like. Michkov to go 4th overall to the Sharks. I still think he's too good to fall out of the top 5. I'm not sure Montreal is the team that's going to be taking him. Look for maybe the Sharks to surprise at plus 310. And frankly, the 5th overall pick, the most interesting one of everything on the boards. Last I looked, Ryan Leonard was the favorite to be picked, but it was at plus 180. So a lot of interesting possibilities there with that Habs pick. And again, the potential that the Habs may actually trade down and a team jumping up to get Michkov if he's still on the board. All the markets up at Coolbet. And as we've said, of course, we're here tomorrow, but these draft shows have been so much fun. Winnipeg Sports Talk live in Nashville at the NHL Draft, presented by our great partners at Coolbet. Big thanks to Pat and Jake for joining us earlier in the week and for their support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. If you haven't played a Coolbet before and you want to maybe bet on the draft tonight, use the promo code WST when you're making your first deposit for a 100% bonus. Up to $200 on that first deposit. And big thanks again. And, of course, check today's Lock Shop. A little more on the draft and lots on the Rocket Mortgage, which begins tomorrow in Detroit. Thanks to Ryan Kennedy. Thanks to Sean Reynolds. And a big thanks to Murat for jumping on and hanging out with us today. We're going to go catch up with the fellas because Kevin Cheveldayoff is speaking in less than an hour. Keep your eye on our YouTube channel as well as our social media channels for more from the draft. And we'll be getting that out. We'll have some of it for you tomorrow on the show. One more time in Nashville before we head back. And yes, we will do marbles on Friday once we're back in Winnipeg. Huge thanks to CoolBet, our presenting sponsor of these shows, and thanks to everyone that joined us. Hit that thumbs up on the way out if you haven't already, and make sure to hit that subscribe button. And, of course, you know where to find the podcast. Search Winnipeg Sports Talk wherever you get your favorite pods. Great job by Michael Remis making it happen. Thanks to the guests. Thanks to all of you. Enjoy round 1 of the draft tonight, and we'll see you on our social channels and be back tomorrow with one more show from Nashville, presented by CoolBet at the NHL Draft. Enjoy the draft tonight, everyone, and thanks for being with us.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.